All right, thanks, Evan. I'll just want to look to the clerk. Do we have all of council here to begin the meeting? And if we do, then we'll go into the regular course of agenda.
We're just waiting for Councillor Miller. I think he may have entered the room. He is? No, he's not here yet, so.
Okay, well, welcome to Monday, February 22nd, the regular meeting of council. As we always start with, we will start with the singing of O Canada. Turn it over to Evan, the council coordinator.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all of us command, carton bras et porter le pays, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
You're muted, Mr. Mayor.
What a way to start a meeting. That's great. Thanks, Councillor Garcia. If I had a penny for every time I heard that, you're muted, we'd all be a little bit richer this year. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather as traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us of a great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous peoples. So I just have a bit of a mayor's report, and there is some updates related to COVID-19. Just want to start with that. The province obviously has placed us into the gray lockdown category for the past week and a bit. And over the past several weeks, we have seen a decline in the number of active cases, the number of new cases, and the number of outbreaks in our community. So we are trending in the right direction. And it does show that the efforts that our community has been making since the beginning of COVID-19 are making a difference and continue to make a difference. But we do understand that there is some confusion around the current framework and why we're in the gray lockdown, whereas other communities around us are either in red, orange, or even yellow. In a meeting that we had on Friday with Dr. Hergy, he has every other Friday a meeting with the regional councillors. He explained that the reason for us being in gray, continuing to be in gray, and looking at how we're slowly going to reopen the economy is based on not just the metrics that I mentioned, which is the new cases, the number of new cases, the outbreaks, and those kind of the capacities at our local hospitals, but also the new variants that they're starting to see coming in from different parts of the world, that there's a concern that they're a more highly transmissible virus within the COVID family. And while it is not, these variants are not more deadly, they are more highly contagious, and which means we do have an older demographic here in Niagara. It is often referenced that we are one of the older demographics in the Canadian space for demographics. Between us, Victoria and Peterborough and places like that, we do tend to trend in terms of older demographics. And so there's a need to ensure that as the vaccines arrive, that they do get into the arms of those that would be in a higher risk category. Friday morning of last week, I got to spend some time with General Rick Hillier as part of a mayor's meeting, and he took us through the three-phased approach that the provincial government has put in place, led by retired General Rick Hillier. And it's looking like the 80 and up population here in Ontario, the aim is to be vaccinated by the end of March. So that is that target. The long-term care homes have already been vaccinated here in Niagara. High-risk retirement homes are being vaccinated, and the healthcare workers are being vaccinated as well. And I just want to again say thank you to our staff that helped set up the Seymour Hanna complex. That is running very well, and there's a lot of frontline workers are going through that space, getting the vaccination. Heading into what looks like to be April is really where you'll see the 60 to 79 age demographic getting their vaccines, in addition to at-risk populations, in addition to others with identified high-risk medical issues. So I'm giving you a window of about six to 8 weeks where you'll see a significant rollout, depending on the volume of vaccines that we get, a significant rollout of vaccination in our community. So what Dr. Hergy is attempting to do with the best medical advice that he's been able to reference is slowly open the economy in line with where the vaccinations are being placed into the community. And what that means is we don't want to open up to a orange or a yellow in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then because of a new variant that comes into the community, have to go back to red or lockdown, like we've seen with Lambton. Lambton County went into orange. Within a week, they were back into red. So what Dr. Hergy is attempting to do through the slower reopening of our economy is to stage it so that there isn't a snap back to a closure. In the meeting that we had on Friday, I asked him directly, if we follow this slow opening of the economy as the vaccinations take place, what's the likelihood of going back to gray? And his comment was, we should never go back to gray. And he used the word never because as long as the vaccinations are taking place and we're vaccinating a larger portion of the population, we shouldn't have to go back to a shutdown. So we're in a new space now, and it's sometimes difficult to understand because of the fact that we've been shut down for almost 8 weeks now. It is a challenge for a lot of people, and we can't lose sight of that. A lot of businesses are struggling, small businesses in our community, people who work in those businesses. There's a lot of struggles that are going on. And so trying to create the context and the communication around it is going to be key. But we're hopeful with Pfizer and Moderna, more accessing of vaccines by the federal government, that we'll see more quick vaccinations in our community in the next couple of weeks. You'll start to see being rolled out. I do want to say again, for our economic development team with the Love STC, they've been doing great work promoting that. Right now, it's Taste the World. We have so many restaurants in St. Catharines that are very well, they capture the world of flavors that we have here in our community. So check out Love STC. They've got a great program around Taste the World. And they also have other retailers and other shops that you can do either online ordering or you can do curbside pickup. Our retailers are open, limited capacity, but our retailers are open in gray. As well, we did provincial and federal budget consultations. The message to both levels of government is being very similar, which is safe restart agreements are critical for 2021. We need additional support. We're seeing a lot of revenue loss over the last 2 months. Significant revenue loss means it's going to hit our budget in 2021. We want to make sure that we get those funds. And I do want to say thank you to Councillor Lori Littleton, Vice Chair of the Budget Committee, who jumped in on the federal one with MPP Badaway. She did a great job on that one. I also want to say thank you to MPP Oosterhoff for inviting us to speak in front of the President of the Treasury Board, Michael Persa. So we've been able to get in front of some of the of our federal MPs and provincial MPPs. For city initiatives, if you're looking to do some community engagement, we do have Engage STC, which has our aquatics strategy, which closes tomorrow, as well as there's one on recreation facility allocation strategy. So we're looking to get more involved from our community. Check out Engage STC. As well, coldest night of the year. I just want to say congratulations to all the walkers. I know we had walkers here from council. I know Councillor Littleton was there. I know Councillor Porter did the walk as well. I don't know if I'm missing anybody else, but they raised, the entire group raised $160,000 for Start Me Up Niagara. Great organization in our community, helps many vulnerable people in St. Catharines. And it was a great turnout. Great to see everybody out and about. I'll be doing a State of the City address Thursday, March 11th at 7 p.m. You can go to the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce website to register. It's a free event, but it will be done all online. And there's obviously reasons for that. As well, Wednesday is Pink Shirt Day. Reminder to wear your pink shirts to help combat bullying. And to our Jewish community, happy Purim Day, happy Purim, and have a joyous holiday on February 25th. And I'm just going to turn it over to our municipal works. Last week, we had a challenging storm here in Niagara, specifically St. Catharines. And it was a challenge for a lot of our residents and our businesses, but more so, it was also a challenge for our municipal works crew. They did an outstanding job. And I'm just going to say, on behalf of council, I want to say thank you to the crews that worked 24 hours throughout the day, trying to clear the snow in the first iteration of that snowstorm, which then really put us behind as well, because the storm didn't stop for a good 24 hours. And while I do know, and a lot of us faced a lot of angry people who were upset about not having their roads cleared, I want Daryl to say a few words about what, from the vantage point of the municipal works, what they were seeing, and maybe provide some context for why there was some delays, and also maybe that'll shed some light on some of the issues that we were facing. I'll turn it over to Director Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a slide with just a few points on it to sort of put some context around this storm. So Environment Canada reported that St. Catharines received up to 35 centimeters of snow in certain parts, and that's the largest snow event that we've had since 2017. St. Catharines received the most snow in Niagara region for this storm. We're usually pretty lucky, and it usually skirts around us, but not this time. And it was almost double the regional average. So from our response, just to note, the event started on Family Day, which provides some challenges right from the start, because we have no employees in on shift. So we do have to do an overtime call out to get people in, and that takes time and adds time to the response. But we did do that. But again, just to put it in context, this occurred after a smaller event on both the Saturday and the Sunday, where we had to do an overtime call out for that. And I mention that because there are driver hour maximums, and those driver hour maximums are not just daily, but also weekly. So we can't exceed a certain number of hours in a day, and we also can't exceed a certain number of hours in a week. We did respond, as we normally do, to our primary and main routes and designated secondaries first, but recognizing the volume of snow, we actually started shifting into secondaries the morning of February 16th to try to catch up on get those started, because we knew with the amount of snow we were going to have to move, it was going to take some time. The snow ended shortly after 4 p.m. on on February 16th, and we had completed first pass of all secondaries by 11 p.m. February 17th. So going forward, just to again put some, we have made the commitment to council that we will do a compliance report on our snow clearing for 2021 and bring that back to council with any recommended improvements. But we also have already made an adjustment to our SOP, our standard operating procedure, for significant weather events. Council may recall that we revised the level of service in November, which included a window of time where we would not respond, sort of between 8 p.m. at night and 4 a.m. in the morning on secondary routes. Now, we did not implement that for this storm. I'm not sure if you recall, I did send out an email saying that we would respond, but we realized that when we have a significant forecasted event, we cannot wait for that time. So we've already put that in place going forward, and that level of service will be met as we go forward. I also would like to mention that level of service for snow clearing is based on 15 centimeters of snow. So all our targets are based, just like you design a storm sewer for a certain storm, and you will have storms that exceed that. We have designed our snow response based on a certain snow event, and we will have storms that will exceed that. It's stating the obvious, but deeper the snow, the longer it takes to push it out of the way. So where our plows may be able to do 20 kilometers an hour in a small event, they're down to 5 and 10 kilometers an hour when you're talking about snow this deep. So I trust that that puts the event in some context and discuss some of the challenges. I do appreciate that you all received many calls, emails with respect to this. I want to say that every single email that was submitted to me was forwarded to staff for action. And I know that some of them I was not able to get back to you on them, but just know that when I get them, they are forwarded to staff for action. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Daryl. I'm just going to go over the CAO, Shelley Kemnitz, just in terms of follow-up after the compliance report. So can we expect, or will there be an opportunity just to get an update further after a review of the compliance to come back to council? Because I do think councillors did get a lot of questions about service level, you know, a whole bunch of litany of questions. How can we close the loop on this as well with our residents?
Yeah, certainly, as the director had indicated, we will be submitting a compliance report as well. Staff does a debrief after each significant snow event, and this certainly, as you heard, is one, and we can feed that back into council as well as to budget committee when we're looking at where are our levels and our service levels and funding levels each year. So we will oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, would that be in form of a memo, or is that more of a report?
I think the debrief, we've received something sort of informally from the director here, but I think that he can provide us with a memo afterwards, and certainly there will be a larger report forthcoming. But I think given the amount of questions and concerns we had following this one, that a memo would be something that council should be receiving.
Okay, so at that point, it would be good for council to be able to have questions, pull the memo when it comes, and if there's any further questions. But in the meantime, if you have any further questions as councillors, just send them to the CAO and try and get further information, because I know we were talking about service levels. We want to make sure that our residents are getting the best service available, considering it was a significant snow event. I don't think we can hide behind the fact that it was a significant snow event. So that put us all at a disadvantage right away. Thank you very much, Daryl. I appreciate the update, Director Smith. And I'm going to turn it over to the clerks for the adoption of the agenda.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this evening's agenda changes. First off, your items in council's sugar sink folder. You have a confidential memorandum from the Deputy City Clerk regarding vacancy and appointments on Arts and Culture Advisory Committee and the LGBTQ2+ Advisory Committee, as well as appointments for the Development Studies Task Force. You have a confidential memorandum from Deputy CAO regarding 123 St. Paul Street, a letter from Rochelle Bush regarding renaming Centennial Gardens to Richard Pierpoint Park, a letter from Honorable Stephen Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, regarding consulting on growing the size of the Greenbelt. The following amendments are also on your agenda. This evening's agenda has the following amendments. General Committee Agenda Item 3.4, Living Wage Certification Application, will now be discussed immediately after Item 3.1. Clerical amendment to General Committee Agenda Item 2.3, Sub-Item 1, the resolution regarding unlicensed and unmonitored cannabis grow operations is actually from the Township of Blandford, Blenheim, and not the City of Port Colborne. Councillor Garcia has also requested that this item be endorsed instead of just receiving this resolution. So we have taken the liberty of doing that in your consent motion. For item 2.4 on the General Committee agenda, Councillor Littleton has requested that staff be directed to forward the correspondence from the Ontario Ombudsman's Office dated February 17th, 2021 to the interested person who delegated to Council, as well as those who sent correspondence for the Council meeting of October 19th, 2020 regarding 610 Dalhousie Avenue. As well, General Committee Agenda Item 2.3, Sub-Item 17, correspondence from Women in Niagara. Councillor Miller has requested that the Mayor's office be directed to send a letter of support and thanks to Women in Niagara for their letter. And an additional reason to go in camera this evening is to discuss a confidential memorandum from the Deputy CAO regarding 123 St. Paul Street, and the item will be added as item 2.2 on this evening's in-camera agenda. And that's my changes for the evening. Thank you.
There's a lot of changes and updates to the agenda. Any other changes to the agenda that we'd like to make? Councillor Miller?
Just on, sorry, on general item 2.4, certainly support Councillor Littleton's motion. I'm just wondering if maybe we could ask staff, maybe not direct as a public relations professional myself, but ask staff other ways that it could be shared, just because it was something that came from the public and we want to make sure everyone sees it, whether it's our social media channels or a website, something like this.
Okay, that's good direction. Thank you, Councillor Miller. Okay, no other changes to the agenda. I will ask for a motion. Councillor Phillips, can I get you? And Councillor Dodge? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
That's carried. Any conflicts of interest today that we have? Councillor Phillips?
Yes, I do. On correspondence, item 2.3.3, my son is employed by the AGCO.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Phillips. Any other conflicts of interest? Okay, seeing none. We have the adoption of the minutes that council adopt the minutes of the meetings of council held on Monday, February 1st, 2021, and general committee meeting held on February 1st, and the special meeting of council held on Monday, February 8th. Can I have Councillor Harris move that motion? Seconded by Councillor Kushner. Is he not here? Okay, Councillor Garcia, sorry about that. Councillor Garcia. Any comments or updates on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We'll now resolve into general committee. No items have been requested to be moved from consent. So we have a motion to remove the consent agenda. And if I can have Councillor Townsend move that. Seconded by Councillor Kushner. And I'll turn it over to the clerk for the recorded vote and a reading of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through this evening's consent agenda, item 2.2, planning and building services. Planning services, extension of interim control bylaw to temporarily prohibit cannabis production facilities. 2.2, financial management services, director from the director, budget standing committee report meeting of January 25th, 2021. 2.3, legal and clerk services, office of the city clerk, council correspondence. Save and accept the items that we brought forward. 2.4, legal and clerks services, office of the city clerk, response letter, 610 Dalhousie Avenue from the Ontario Ombudsman. That's this evening's consent agenda. Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you very much for that. Now we move on to public meetings. And I'm just going to take a drink of water. Because it's the 2021 water and wastewater budget. That's why we're going to take like a little clean water from the city of St. Catharines. Appreciate that. All right, we got the notice of adoption of the 2021 water wastewater budget. And I say that because it's an important budget because it's about all of our clean water and wastewater. Members of the public were provided options to submit written correspondence. No notice items of written correspondence were received. As today's public meeting is being held electronically, members were able to delegate via Zoom, and no one registered to speak. And so staff will be giving a presentation, and then there will be a closing of the public meeting, and then council will have an opportunity to ask some questions. And with that, everything has been published in accordance with the city's bylaw notice. We will have Director Martuccio, Director of Engineering, Facilities and Environmental Services, along with Director Smith. And we will also have Manager of Budgets and Procurement, Lucia Chen, and please present the 2021 budget. So we'll have three presenters. They will be going back and forth, and enjoy yourself. Grab a cup of clean St. Catharines water.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and senior staff. This evening, we'll be presenting the city's 2021 draft water and wastewater budget for your consideration. The full budget document is provided in your package and is also available on the city's website. Within the region of Niagara, the supply and distribution of drinking water to the end user is a shared responsibility between the region and the city of St. Catharines. The region is responsible for the treatment and bulk distribution of water through the regional trunk mains, where the city then distributes it to the end user to their property line. The responsibility for wastewater is similar to that of water, except in reverse, where the city takes wastewater from the property line, delivers it to the regional trunk sewer, where it is then delivered to the treatment at the wastewater treatment plant before being released back into the environment. The replacement value of all the city's assets is just over $4.9 billion, with water mains and sanitary sewers making up approximately $2.4 billion of that, which represents approximately 48% of all city assets. 2021 is the second year that the water main and sanitary sewer improvements were approved by council as part of the capital budget, which was approved on December 14th, 2020. The capital budget includes an allocation of approximately $12.1 million for water main and sanitary sewer capital works, of which $6.9 million is funded from the water wastewater rates. It is well documented that the cost of construction has been steadily increasing over the last few years. That is especially true when it comes to the cost of constructing underground services. On this chart, you can see that between 2008 and 2014, the cost per meter of pipe installed was in the range of $400 to $800. Today, those costs have escalated to the range of $1,100 to $1,600 per meter. As a result, if budgets are maintained at similar levels to previous years, fewer underground assets will be renewed on an annual basis, which will result in an increase to our infrastructure deficit. I will now pass things over to our Director of Municipal Works, Joe Smith.
Thank you, Anthony. Operationally, there are two main challenges our systems face. On the wastewater side, it's infiltration, which allows clean water to enter our sanitary sewer. This reduces capacity, increases treatment cost, and contributes to basement flooding. On the water distribution system, it's water loss from main breaks or broken valves and fire response, just to name a few. To maximize the efficiency of our systems, minimize treatment costs, and extend the useful life of our assets, we need to develop a robust proactive maintenance plan. To get there, Municipal Works will be bringing to Council in 2021 a service level review. We are hoping by rationalizing levels of service, we are able to reallocate existing resources to a proactive program. For the most of our city assets, the condition of the assets can be determined through visual inspection or condition assessments. For water mains, we rely on break rates or service disruption rates and colored water complaints. We also use available fire flow, age of the pipe, and material type as key identifiers for determining asset renewal projects. In 2020, there were approximately 113 water main breaks recorded across the city, but that is only part of the story. In addition to the breaks, Municipal Works staff also responded to a similar number of private water connections, and over and above that, various valve issues throughout the city. As you can see on the map, the breaks are distributed across the city and not concentrated in any one part. Historical trends have demonstrated that increased funding levels for the asset renewal of water infrastructure has generally resulted in less water main breaks and service disruptions. However, more recently, it is illustrated that maintaining the funding levels consistent year after year has resulted in an increase in water main breaks, since increasing construction costs provides for a smaller percentage of assets getting replaced each year. I'll now turn it over to Lucia Chen, Manager of Budgets and Procurement.
Thank you, Daryl. In 2019, both the City Council and Niagara Regional Council approved their 10-year water and wastewater financial plans as required under the Safe Drinking Water Act. In order to mitigate the immediate physical impact of COVID-19, the city has reduced its planned investments in the water, sanitary sewer, and pollution control projects for the 2021 budget and 2022 to 2025 forecast. This approach is consistent with the mitigation measures implemented in the city's 2021 tax levy operating budget. The region is also deviating from their 10-year financial plan in 2021. They are deferring the request of a 5.15% annual increase by 1 year and committed to resume the 5.15% increase in 2022. Summarized in this slide are the 2021 water and wastewater expenditures. As demonstrated, the total expenditures for the wastewater budget are greater than the water budget, and this is largely due to the regional cost. Regional costs are 49% of the water expenditure budget, 75% of the wastewater expenditure budget, and 63% of the combined water and wastewater expenditures. Budget details are found in the report and associated appendices. City staff regularly analyze the actual volume of water purchases based on the 3 separate seasons of the year. This graph shows the average monthly purchases during each of these 3 seasons in the past 20 years. All of the 3 lines generally show declining consumption over the time period, except for the summer of 2016, 2018, and 2020 in the recent years. The most volatile line of the 3 is the blue one on top, which represents the summer months of June through September. A decline was experienced in 2019. The 2020 year saw a year of increase due to the extremely hot and dry summer. The summer consumption is generally higher than the other seasons. The winter and shoulder seasons show consumption patterns that move consistently together with the trend we see in the recent years. Reviewing these trends, staff are of the opinion that city water purchases will be approximately 15 million cubic meters in 2021, which is in line with the past 3 and 5 year averages and slightly higher than the 2020 actual amount of 14.6 million cubic meters. Switching to consumption by customer type, there was a sharp decline around 2008 in consumption of both the residential and industrial, commercial, and institutional sectors, which with residential being slightly lower. In more recent years, we see the lead consumption sector changing. For 2018, the ICI and residential sector both were almost equal. Then 2019 had a very wet spring, and therefore both sector consumptions declined from the prior year. With the COVID-19 pandemic and lots of residents staying at home, in 2020, we experienced an increase in residential consumption while the usage in ICI sector continues to decline. So how is all of this impacting the water and wastewater rates in 2021? The city's current water and wastewater rate structure is a combination of fixed and volumetric charges. The fixed portion is calculated to recover the costs of the water main and sewer replacement program budgets. The remainder of the costs are recovered through the volumetric portion. From 2020 to 2021, the water portion of the bill will increase by $3.40, and the wastewater will increase by $12.74. In 2021, the average residential customer will pay an annual amount of $889.83 for an increase of 1.85% or $16.14 per year for the average household based on the usage of 170 cubic meters. The rate increase will take effect on March the 1st, 2021. Based on the region's 2021 water and wastewater budget increases, the city's proposed increase for 2021 is consistent. Looking at the 2021 water and wastewater rates in a different way, residents can purchase a case of water for $2 from the store. With the proposed 2021 water wastewater rates, for the same amount of money, residents can not only drink the same amount of water, but also they can take a shower, do a load of laundry, do a load of dishes, and bathe the children. Looking now at how the city's 2021 average water bill measures up with our municipal comparators. The rates shown on the screen are the most current rates, including approved 2021 rates if available. As you can see, St. Catharines' proposed 2021 rate is below the average of all the municipal comparators of $926 per year. Switching to how the city's water wastewater bills compare across our region. Again, the most current rates are displayed and with both years shown for the city of St. Catharines. Rates have been steadily increasing in the majority of the municipalities in Niagara region for the last number of years. If we look at the green bar towards the bottom of the chart, with the recommended rates for 2021, St. Catharines ratepayers on average pay less than the other municipalities in our region, except for town of Pelham and city of Niagara Falls. When we compare the city's water and wastewater costs to other household expenses, the 2021 water and wastewater rates are one of the lowest household expenses in comparison with other utility and household costs. The city is continuously looking at ways to improve our services provided to customers. There have been some significant improvements made to the water wastewater billing process since Q3 2014, when the automated meter reading project started. In Q1 2020, the e-billing was launched, and the city was planning to complete all the AMR installation in Q2 2020, which has been paused due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2021, staff are looking to implement the bi-monthly water billing process. Currently, water is billing every 4 months. There are a number of benefits to bi-monthly billing, such as allowing customers to adjust their water usage habits if they feel they're using too much water, allowing customers to detect any leaks in their household plumbing sooner, and to provide consistency to assist monthly home budgets for our customers and residents, as they will see less fluctuation on their water bills, especially after heavy usage periods. City staff will update the Budget Standing Committee and Council before the change in billing cycle is made. Mr. Mayor, that concludes our presentation.
All right, thank you very much. Lucia Chen, the manager of procurement for our community, our city. And so we have Director Martuccio and Director Smith also available for questions. I'll turn it over to Councilor Sorrento. You got your first hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to just get over into the report over here, so just bear with me. I see that on page 18 that we have three, and Mr. Mayor, this is to any one of our directors, that we have 3 purchases. One is a cube van, the other is a triaxle dump truck, and a tandem dump truck. So have we purchased those yet? Are those in our possession, Mr. Mayor, to any one of our directors?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we have not made those purchases yet.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, and then when can we expect to see those purchases, Director Smith?
Once the budget is approved, we'll start the purchase process. For the cube van, that's a relatively quick process, and I say relatively quick. It can still take up to 7 or 8 months. The larger trucks will probably take close to a year before they actually enter our fleet.
That's too bad. I was hoping that we would have had the triaxle and tandem dump trucks by the end of the year. Maybe we could have added it to our fleet, but that's fine. Thank you. And then the only clarification I want is, well, I'd like to comment on, Mr. Mayor, is that 170 cubic meters is a little hard for the average person to understand. So I did a little research, and that translates to 37,394 imperial gallons. So maybe for some of the boomers and people who were schooled in the imperial system, it might make a little bit more sense, because I couldn't wrap my head around 170 cubic meters. That's a great report, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support it. Clean water and infrastructure are incredibly important to this community, to everybody's well-being, and a 1.85% increase at $16.14 is pretty darn good. So thank you, and that's all that I have.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrento. Well said. Councillor Kushner, you're up, and then Councillor Williamson.
Yes, thank you. Could we have an expansion on the sustainability component of the report? You indicate that the gap in the short run will widen, and how long will it take before it becomes completely sustainable?
So it's either going to be Director Martuccio or Director Smith.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is actually something that we are also taking a look at through our asset management plan. We're currently working on that with a target of coming back in July with more information on that. But with regards to sustainability, we're looking at our overall system to identify what our deficit is and what type of funding levels are required to become more sustainable in addressing our infrastructure needs.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, you've indicated that construction costs have increased significantly, and it's understandable when we have projects such as buildings where the materials have increased dramatically, but why for underground services?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the cost for underground services, material costs for pipe and for backfill, there's also environmental, more stringent environmental impacts that we need to deal with regards to dealing with the soil in the appropriate manner, and all those factors, plus the fact that, you know, our construction industry is still very hot. Contractors are, you know, when the economy is doing well, and the construction industry is doing well, generally we tend to get higher prices across the board in terms of construction.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Martuccio or Mr. Smith. Along the same lines as Councillor Kushner, are other municipalities kind of following the same pattern because the construction costs are higher? Are they deferring a renewal of infrastructure similar to what the region's doing, what we're doing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the approach that we're taking with our infrastructure is very similar to the approach that many of the municipalities in Niagara region and across Ontario are faced with, and we're all facing very similar challenges with regards to addressing our infrastructure needs.
Thank you. And one more question. Is there a point where we know we've got certain kinds of pipe and infrastructure underground where we know we're going to have to replace a whole lot of it? And are we going to get walloped at a certain point, 10 years or 5 years or whatever down the line? Or does it look like it's going to be sort of a consistent pattern, steady kind of a pattern?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's a very difficult question to answer. It really all depends on how cost of construction, if they continue to increase or not. You know, if our economy slows down and construction costs start to come back down, obviously we're going to be able to address more infrastructure with the budgeted dollars we have. But based on the trend that we're currently facing now, we're only going to be faced with increased deficits in our infrastructure needs.
Thank you. I was meaning more about like ductile iron or whatever kinds of pipe that we have underground. Is there a chance that we're going to have like a spread of a sudden sort of surge in need to do replacements at some point in the future, or is it going to be kind of more of a consistent pattern?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this point where it's more of a consistent pattern that we're facing. It's always difficult to predict when certain types of materials will fail, but we have a pretty good handle with regards to where infrastructure needs, and we're trying to address it as best we can.
Thank you, Mr. Martucci. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson, Councillor Garcia, then Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff, I think this follows along the lines of some of the questions that have been asked, but do we see any stability in terms of what the increases are going to be in the future? I know we have to replace infrastructure, but when we make the comparison to the cost of water to other utilities, water does seem very cheap, but I think one of the reasons we get a lot of complaints about water rates is because over the last so many years, they seem to have gone up a lot faster than, let's say, hydro or natural gas. Do we see that stabilizing at all, or can we continue to expect that rates for water are going to climb steadily like that?
All right.
Mr. Mayor, maybe if I can start with the water main breaks, and then if someone wants to speak to the, one of the reasons we are pushing to try to get a robust proactive maintenance plan is that's one of the ways that we can control breaks in the system. We are, working with Anthony's team on planning the asset renewals, and if the more life that we can garner out of these older materials, the better off we are, and that's one of the ways that we're trying to address that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Daryl's on point with that. Our asset management plan is also identifying the fact that addressing our infrastructure needs at more regular intervals, whether it's through maintenance or just regular maintenance on addressing infrastructure needs, it will extend the life of our assets, which will allow us to fully realize the life expectancy of those assets in the long run. So Daryl's got a very good point there, where maintenance is going to be critical moving forward in order to realize the full life of our assets.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to perhaps Director Smith, since water breaks are so significant, are there any improvements in technology as far as repairing breaks, or are we still doing this the same way we used to do it 10 years ago kind of thing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there are some, actually, by the time you get to the break, no, there's really not much more we can do than what we do. Again, if we can catch the strain on the system before the break actually occurs, there are things out there that we can use to actually prevent breaks, such as relining of water mains, which is not cheap, but far less expensive than replacing a water main. So there's things like that we can do. We can actually, one of the costs associated with breaks is usually by the time we know of a break, it's caused a lot of damage to the road, to the sub base, to the potentially to other infrastructure that's in the road allowance. And there are some technologies out there that we're investigating with respect to leak detection that will help us detect leaks before they actually can get large and cause a lot of damage, would make them quicker and easier to repair, but also lowers the cost substantially when you're not repairing large areas of road base that's washed out because of the water main break.
Thank you, Director. And I noticed in your chart on showing the map of breaks that in old Port Dalhousie, there was only one break. That was amazing and surprising and pleasing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Garcia. And seeing no other hands up, I just want to say thank you to the Thank you to the team that put this together. And I think one of the most informative slides that I hope communications will use is the cost per household comparative to other things like gas and hydro and cell phone and mortgages and everything else. The fact that you're getting clean water right from your tap into a glass that is some of the cleanest water in the world for $2 and some odd cents, plus you're able to do other things like take a bath and do your laundry and everything. It speaks volumes about the infrastructure that we do have. And I think to Councillor Garcia's point, if this was billed monthly, you wouldn't get any phone complaints because it'd be built into everyone's monthly schedule. It's because every 4 months they get a big bill, they look at it, they complain about how much it is. But when you actually divide it over 12 months, it's about $60 plus on the average household, which is cheap considering when you look at cable, internet, or internet and cable together, cell phone bills, all those things are much more expensive. And what's the one thing that you need to live? Water. And it's $2, comes with your house. So hopefully from a I know you need food and everything else, but water is pretty much, without water, you're dead. So it is one of those things where I think we take it for granted. And we got to be mindful of the infrastructure, as Councillor Williamson was pointing out. We got to be mindful of our infrastructure. And when it comes to climate change, what we saw 3 or 4 years ago, the frost line went below 4 feet. And we all know what happens when the frost line goes below 4 feet. That's when you start to see a significant popping of the infrastructure. So climate change has to play a role in this along the way as well, because if we get deeper frosts, we're going to be in a lot more trouble than what we've seen in the last couple of years. So with that, I'll look to the clerk and we can call a motion to approve. I'll need a mover and a seconder. I'm going to do two things. Close the public meeting. That'll be Councillor Kushner and Councillor Phillips. All in favor of closing the public meeting. That's carried. Now we've moved on to the budget, the motion that's in front of you. Moving the motion, I've got Councillor Phillips and Councillor Williamson, and now I will call the vote and turn it over to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, on the motion on the screen, Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Cisco,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
and Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried unanimously.
All right, public meeting is closed. Persons wishing to receive notice of council's decision should submit a written request to the office of the city clerk. We have another public meeting coming up. 6.2 financial management services, property management. This is largely a housekeeping item. It's stop up and close Unnamed Street west of Jacobson Avenue. Notice of consideration regarding this has been published in accordance with the city's notice bylaw. The members of the public were offered an opportunity to come and speak. No one signed up. No one sent any written correspondence. So the public meeting will be closed. Then council will consider the item for consideration. So we will now commence with the public meeting. And as no one has registered, call the meeting to order. That signifies the end of input. Can I have a motion to close the public meeting portion? Councillor Cisco, Councillor Porter, all in favor? That is carried. And we have a motion on the floor that I'll ask the council coordinator to put it up on the floor. And this is the closing up of a piece of property, Unnamed Street west of Jacobson Avenue. Do we have any questions on this, councillors? If not, Councillor Kushner, can you make the motion, seconded by Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so if there's no further questions, I'll look to the clerk to call the vote.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yeah.
Councillor Cisco,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento. Councillor Sorrento, Counselor,
Or yeah,
Counselor-
yes, sorry.
Thank
Tapped
you.
out. Yes.
Counselor Townsend,
Yes.
Counselor Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
Okay, we will now resolve into regular meeting of council, general committee, and we're going to go over to the CAO for a COVID-19 update. If you have questions of the CAO or any member of staff, once the presentation is complete, just put up your hand and we can have a discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And jumping off the mayor's report, the mayor adeptly covered much of the COVID updates that we have in the report and the information that has transpired over the last number of weeks. I think it's really important to note that there are a lot of various meetings that staff and the mayor and regional councilors, et cetera, are participating in. So there's a lot of information flow. I'd like to put a bit of a plug in for the every second Friday information workshop that Dr. Hergy has with regional council. And there's a lot of information presented there and a lot of discussion with the counselors, and you can find those links on the region website and view that video as well as it transpires. This is our third update to council this year, and current situation, as you heard from the mayor, our new cases have decreased rather sharply in the last number of weeks. We've continued to trend downwards, and certainly our response efforts through the city and the region have continued to limit the spread of the virus. Several of our provincial monitoring indicators have improved into the green and also into the orange restrict bubble thresholds in the provincial framework. We currently remain, as you know, in the gray lockdown level of the province's framework, but we're hopeful that with continued improvements with the situation will be transitioned into less restrictive levels in the coming weeks. And always, we must still remain vigilant, as we heard in the mayor's report, that, with the introduction of the variants of concern, there is always the need to be vigilant until we reach that point of vaccination, where we are a safer community. As well, there is some information in the report regarding the Section 22 orders from our local medical officer of health that they came into effect as of today. Of the writing of the report, they were still pending. There's information in there as they will be affecting food services once those become open to the public, and our shopping malls and retail stores, which are presently open now in our gray level. The vaccine task force continues to meet and prepare for mass immunization, and we're working through the first phase and moving into the second phase before long in our area. We're beginning to recover from the vaccine shortages, and we're expecting to receive, Canada's expecting to receive its largest shipment of vaccine doses this week. And with this increased supply, we'll see the larger rollout in our region specifically. Niagara Region Public Health continues to focus on administering the second doses of the vaccine to our vulnerable populations in long-term care homes, congregate settings, and high-risk retirement homes. And Niagara Health has resumed administering the vaccine to essential healthcare workers. And as you know, this is being part of our function at the Seymour and Hannah Center as a vaccination site beginning on February 18th. The city's agreement with Niagara Health is for the use of our facility. However, the planning and operation of the site as a site clinic is under the operations of Niagara Health System. We've a portion in our report tonight that talks about managing through the pandemic and moving our city forward as it relates to our strategic plan. As you know, in the last 11 months, we've considered many reports and initiatives which have sought both to keep our community safe and to support our community members by increasing our resiliency and sustainability as we progress forward to recovery. We've progressed through various stages of this pandemic, always with our eyes forward to a time when its pressures on our activities will reduce. We're constantly reflecting back and using that information to improve our efforts moving forward. And while our senior leadership team is regularly reviewing work plans and adjusting and amending them, this regular review is even more crucial during the pandemic. Our resources are strained, and we want to ensure that we're not only using them most efficiently and effectively, but that we are in strong alignment with council priorities as they are enumerated in the strategic plan. COVID has changed much about how we do our business each and every day. Some initiatives have been accelerated and some have slowed down or even been paused. And as we review our work plans, we would value council's input in reviewing the various initiatives within our strategic plan. In effect, we'd like to recalibrate to ensure that our current plans are in alignment with the priorities of council and using the lens of COVID's impact into our community. We're seeking council's participation in this process, and we have hired a facilitator to assist. And in the upcoming days and weeks, council will be seeing some invitations to individual consultations to gain all of your individual input as well as your collective input to make sure that we're all aligned and that we use our resources in the best manner we possibly can. I will turn over a presentation to our director, Douglas, for some information on our financial implications.
Thank you, CAO Chemnitz. As the CAO has indicated, the COVID-19 pandemic continues to be very fluid. The Financial Management Services staff team and all city departments are monitoring the pandemic's financial impact and making regular adjustments as required. Forecasting financial impacts to March 31st, 2021 are the focus of this update. Looking at the tax levy budget, the most significant impact is related to the loss in revenues due to facility closures, waiving of user fees, and the increased costs to address the pandemic, which at this time are estimated to be $1.884 million. With mitigation and cost containment efforts equaling $1.4 million, the net tax levy impact is estimated to be $480,000, which includes the net estimated impact on the Meridian Center operations of $124,000. When we look at the water and wastewater budget that council approved this evening, at this point, the water and wastewater budget is estimating a small favorable balance to the end of Q1 of 2021. Turning to a parking services budget, with parking fees for the city's garages, on-street and surface lots being waived until April 30th, this creates an unfavorable revenue impact of $537,000, which is partially mitigated with the limited enforcement during the same time period, resulting in a net unfavorable impact of $410,000. At this time, the city's agency boards and commissions are all forecasting their financial impact to March 31st of 2021 to be at a break even or a small surplus position. When we look at all of our operating budget impacts, they are summarized with a total impact of $879,000. To date, we have received financial support from the federal and provincial governments of $726,000. Therefore, the net estimated impact on 2021 to date is $153,000. Staff are in the process of completing the city's 2020 year-end closing entries and year-end work. At this time, mitigation and cost containment efforts utilized during 2020 and the additional support from the federal and provincial governments, it is anticipated that the city will end 2020 in a positive position. Any 2020 year-end surplus could be utilized to offset the unfavorable position forecasted for Q1 of 2021. With this approach is in alignment with the direction received from the upper levels of government with the Safe Restart funding that was received. A full update on the 2020 year end is scheduled to come forward at the March 22nd Budget Standing Committee meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you both to CAO Chemnitz and Director Douglas for that very thorough report. Councillor Porter, then Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know I should ask a question, but I don't have one. I just want to say I've spoken with some other councillors and some other municipalities. They don't get the same type of regular communication during COVID that we get. So I feel quite fortunate to be on this council, and I just wanted to say thank you to our CAO and to our staff and to Scott Ross for all of the updates that we get all of the time. It helps us be on the same page, and I'm really happy to see that we're going to be taking a look at our strategic plan. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Townsend and Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our CAO. My question is regards to the strategic plan. Obviously, we're looking to tweak it. Is it common to tweak a strategic plan this soon into a strategic plan? It feels like it was just a year and a half ago that we just finished completing our strategic plan. I'm just wondering if the CAO can touch on that.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think in this time, some things feel like they were only yesterday and other things feel like they were a lifetime ago. So I do understand that. We have been, strategic planning is fairly new for us. And so we have been doing more regular updates than we normally have. So every couple years, definitely once a council term. So that kind of works out once in a check-in just before the end of the term, which we're at that 2-year point. I do think for us, COVID brought us to say, you know, I draw us back to our capital budget discussion in budget time last year. And I think that it's a very good thing for us to take the lens of what COVID has, you know, both done positively and negatively to our community, and just to make sure we are all in the same place for this year and going forward. It's very important. I think so. Yeah, it's not something you want to do every year. I would characterize this more as a sort of a check-in, and we've been sort of using the word recalibration rather than a full-on strategic planning process, but rather to do a quick check of where we are. At the same time as the interviews with the counselors will occur, you'll also be provided with some information as to where we are with respect to all of those items of the strategic plan. So you'll get that in advance, so you'll be able to, you know, more reflect on what the objectives were and where we are in position with all of them.
Okay, thank you for that answer. My follow-up question to that would be in regards to, obviously we're in the middle of looking for a new CAO. And I know our current CAO is very well capable of updating and tweaking this strategic plan. My question is should we be waiting until the appointment of a new CAO before we kind of progress with the tweaking of the strategic plan?
Through Mr. Mayor, if we were going through a full strategic plan exercise, that's certainly to help lead that would be something we would want to consider. In this case, you have your existing senior team and you have your counselors. And so I think, given that we're doing a sort of just a check-in, that this is still appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend and Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to our CAO. In regards to this, now you indicate you didn't answer part of my question when I was going to ask. We're not aware of where we are with the strategic plan. You've been kind of busy, rightfully so. So we don't know what initiatives have been accomplished in the last year or so. We will be made aware of those prior to this interview, correct? You said?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. What we're going to do is we'll have a very, as concise as we possibly can, 1 or 2 pager chart so that you can look at, here are the action items and here is the status where we are, particularly highlighting if any of those items are things that are either completed or that will be a major focus of our work this year. So you'll be able to quickly, without reading a long extensive report, but a very quick summary of where we are with respect to the items.
Okay, so through the interview, what is the overall intent? What do you hope to glean from us?
So the first stage will the facilitator will meet with our senior staff to finalize everything that's on those on that summary and to gain an understanding of where they are in progress, just to make sure that we have it all drawn together, and also their thoughts on where our resources would be best used and their priorities as it pertains to how COVID has changed either what we've been able to deliver or a shifting of what we would like to deliver, what we feel the community needs. And then the facilitator will sit down or over the phone, well, it's going to be virtually over the phone, speak with each of the counselors to see where their priorities lie of particular interest. I referenced it once already. I've asked the facilitator to have a view of the our capital budget meetings that we had last fall, and I think all of that gives a good snapshot to let her see how some of our priorities are shifting and how we've been feeling things differently in the lens of COVID. So it will be, it's not an extensive discussion again, but it's really just to highlight where the individual counselors are feeling. And as well, we will have other consultation, smaller meetings with the 2 ward counselors each together if there is any specific ward-based priorities that you wanted to bring forward. So initially a conversation with individual counselors for the larger picture items, and then if there are certain ward concerns, some things do affect different wards in the city more than they do others. So we'll have that opportunity for you to work together with your ward mates to also bring those concerns forward.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Sorrento, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To any one of our directors and perhaps CAO Chemnitz first, what can you tell us where we are in terms of our staff complement? I remember last year, I think we had to lay off half of our full-time staff. Can you give us an update, because it's going to affect the services moving forward? So that's my question.
And certainly, Mr. Mayor, I'll defer to our Director of Corporate Services for that.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, if I understood you correctly, you were asking the status of our staff complement. If I can speak to those on layoff, this is what you're referring to. As our services come forward, we will be recalling those staff. Is that getting to your question there, Councillor?
That's correct, Director. Yes, please.
Okay, so I think through you, Mr. Mayor, I think with our updates, we'd be providing updates to Council with regards to what programs, facilities are opening, and then I think maybe we can attach what impact that has to our staffing complement at that time, if that's satisfactory to yourself and Council.
Mr. Mayor, to the Director, I was just wondering, do you have a general number right now or no? If not, I can wait.
Off the top of, I don't have it at my fingertips here. Shelley, by any chance, do you recall where our last numbers were?
I don't have the specific numbers. However, the majority of the layoffs were part-time. They are not impacting full-time complement as much as they did last year. These are part-time, and it certainly was not a large impact to our full-time complement either last year, but it's predominantly part-time workers.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's fine, and I appreciate that. When you get the numbers, then you can let us know. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrento. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One quick question of staff, and thank you for that update. I see you've given us an update through the end of the first quarter, and I'm curious, I know it's lots of unknowns, but are you doing any projections for the full of 2021 as to what might happen? Or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to our forecasting, due to the fluidity and the uncertainty of the global pandemic, it was staff's opinion that at this juncture, it made the most sense to update you until the first quarter as we get more information and we have these regular updates to Council. If there are significant changes made to our forecasting, we will include that. I will include one caveat. If there are items that impact a longer time frame, and the one example I can use is with regards to our parking fees being waived until the end of April. We have included that impact. So anything that we do know that it would extend beyond March 31st, we have included that in our numbers. But for everything else where we weren't exactly sure what color we were going to be in and when we were going to be moving there, we thought it made the most sense to do it on a quarterly basis, and then other information would be brought to you as the situations arise.
Thank you, Director. And just a clarification on the Safe Restart funding. I thought that we had been told that the last tranche that we had applied for was for the balance of 2020, but you're showing that into 2021. Is that a new application, or is this what we applied for at the end of 2020?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to the Safe Restart funding, the Phase 2 application, the city did receive slightly over $2 million with that application. Then the province also provided funding to all municipalities in Ontario with whether or not they applied for the Phase 2 funding or not. And the city did receive an additional $726,000 that was announced in December with the Phase 2 funding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. So looks like to be it for questions. So thank you very much to the CAO and Director Douglas for those very informative updates. I need a motion to approve and receive, not approve, but receive the report. Councillor Littleton, seconded by Councillor Sorrento, all in favor. And that's carried. Okay, I'm gonna move on now. We got I believe we're at 3.2, and that is Evan, correct me. I think I've got my pages mixed up. 3.2, yes.
Three,
We're at
3.2.
no, we're at 3.4. We moved up the living wage certification application report to
Because
be the
of
second item.
presentations. Yes,
Yes.
thank you. All right, so we do have two delegation. Well, we have one delegation from Ann Coleman, Program Manager, Ontario Living Wage Network. And in addition to that, Lori Kleinsmith, member of the Niagara Poverty Reduction Network, is also available to answer questions during this part of the discussion. So right now, I'll turn it over to Ms. Coleman. Welcome to City Council. It's great to see you. And I'm turning over the mic to you.
Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here today, Mayor and Council. Really just to be able to say thank you for making the commitment to become a certified living wage employer. It's a really fantastic thing that you can do, not only for the people who work for the city, but also for the community itself. So next slide, please. So just a refresher, or for anyone who's at home watching and is not aware, the living wage is the hourly wage a worker needs to earn to cover not just their basic expenses, but also to have a little extra to participate in community. And it's really meant to be a practical tool for reducing poverty through paid work. Next slide, please. In 2019, the living wage in Niagara region was calculated at $18.12 an hour. We typically update living wage rates every year or every other year, but we did suspend calculations in 2020 because of the pandemic. So the next update will be provided in November of this year. Next slide, please. So I like to say that the living wage is something that's good for people, good for business, and good for community. And I think the piece about community is particularly important when we're talking about public sector employers. When people have a living wage, they're less stressed, they're healthier, they have a greater sense of well-being. And the money that they have is something that's going right back into the local economy and supporting local business. Next slide, please. So I've been having great conversations with city staff around the application or the enrollment form for the living wage. And they just asked me to go through some points of the program just as a review. So next slide, please. When an employer becomes certified in our program, they're making the commitment to pay all of their direct employees and indirect employees at least the living wage. So direct employees refers to anyone who you're directly paying their wage or salary. Indirect means externally contracted, third-party contracted staff who are working for the city on a regular basis, more than 120 hours in a year. Next slide, please. And you can there's 3 points thank you. So we do have 3 levels of recognition to allow for a phased-in implementation of our program. The first 2 levels, leader and supporter, are really meant to outline direct employees. So the city of St. Catharines will come in at the supporter level, paying, you're already paying all of your direct full-time employees at least the living wage. The leader level includes any part-time, direct part-time employees. And the champion level is where we begin to address the third-party externally contracted workers. So I will just mention that really, once you've got your part-time workers up to the living wage rate, you would actually be able to be recognized as a champion at that time. One of the parts of that level, or the champion level, is that if a contract is still ongoing, let's say you're in year 1 of a 3-year cleaning contract, I'm not sure if that's exactly how it works, but you would still be able to be recognized as a champion at that time, and then address the contract when it comes up for renewal, including a living wage clause in the RFP. So I just wanted to sort of explain how that piece of the program works. Typically, we like to see employers move to reach the champion level of recognition in 2 or 3 years, but with a larger public sector employers such as the city of St. Catharines, a timeline of 3 or 4 years to reach that champion level is a bit more appropriate. And again, champion level you still have some time to work through that as contracts come up for renewal. So I just really wanted to say thank you again very much for unanimously voting to become a certified living wage employer. And you're really setting a great example for other employers in St. Catharines, in Niagara region, and in the province. So thank you very much. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Coleman. Greatly appreciated and great presentation. I got Councillor Townsend up for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter. I just want to make sure I heard it right. You said 3 to 4 years is kind of the goal, the target goal for municipalities of our size to move into that living wage champion tier.
Yes, that's true. We have in the past not necessarily had the resources to kind of go back to some of the larger employers that are still working through the program. So I know that is the case in a couple of our in one of the other municipalities that has signed up into our program, but we'll be working with them to help them reach their goals.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter, are currently how many municipalities are in that champion tier? Are you allowed to share that information?
We are. I don't think we have any that are certified at the champion level yet. There's only one that had certified a few years ago. The other 3 are very recent, I think just in the last year or 2 that they become certified. In Ontario, in British Columbia, there are a handful of municipalities that are certified, and their levels are slightly different, but they meet the same requirements as that of the champion level, fully implemented.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend, and I don't have any further questions. So Councillor Sorrento, you have a question of the presenter?
Yes, just one, Mr. Mayor. I was talking with a person today who had a concern, local resident who felt like $18.18 wasn't enough money. So when and my question, Mr. Mayor, to CAO Coleman, now when you come up with this living wage, is this based on the assumption that an individual has no debt at all and lives in their own home, or how do you determine that?
Sure. So when we do our living wage calculation, we have a number of basket items that we include in the calculation. And so if you're looking specifically at, it's actually rent, we look at rental rates. And so we also look at what taxes are paid by a family and what tax credits they'll receive. We base our calculation on a family of 4 with 2 working adults. And I will say that the living wage is still a basic wage. It is really meant more as almost an entry level wage, and it does not include things like savings for retirement or debt repayment. So that is important to think about.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Sorrento. So no further questions. So again, I want to thank Ms. Coleman for coming in front of council today. And are there any questions for Ms. Kleinsmith? Because if seeing none, then I just want to get a motion to receive the, oh no, we don't, because this is a presentation. I'm going to now move into the motion on the screen from the council coordinator, if Evan can put on the screen. So we do have a report that has been written by staff, and then Councillor Miller is moving this report.
Yes, sir.
And seconded by Councillor Sorrento. Okay. All right, questions. Councillor Garcia, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff, I certainly support the spirit of what we're trying to do. I just wanted to ask staff about the financial implications, and they're saying, if I understand correctly in the report, that the cost to achieve the living wage status over the years to get to the level, the other levels would be a 567,000 increase to the base operating budget. Is it the appropriate sequence for us to be approving this report now before we approve a budget that includes potentially that amount of increased funds?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the number that was presented in the council report is the councilors referencing the $567,000 approximately. To make that adjustment can be done over a period of time. What we were trying to do here was move forward a comprehensive compensation strategy plan, which included the part-timers movement, and then also we have a below market non-union salaries review that has to happen. So what I foresee is that once we establish this plan, this will come forward and it'll be discussed through the budgeting process so that staff, council are aware of how we're going to fund this. I don't know if Christine Douglas wishes to comment any further to that, but that's how I kind of foresaw the next steps happening. And that's through the budget process and once that plan has been established.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know if Director Douglas is going to comment. So what you're saying, Director Pelletier, is that 567,000 at this time we're projecting to reach the other levels in 3 years. So we can count on roughly approximately a third of that being increased in the budget every year. Maybe Director Douglas can comment on that.
Sorry, go ahead, Christine.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor with regards to us moving forward with the achieving the various levels of living wage status. As Director Pelletier has indicated, this will occur in combination of looking at where our salary levels fall for our other salary positions, and that information as we move forward through this will be factored in as part of our budget discussions as we work towards moving to through the various levels of certification on this living wage component.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. I got Councillor Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question I have is with respect to the service contractors. Has there been consultation with the service contractors? Has there been consultation with the Chamber of Commerce?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for us at this point in time, we've estimated the cost for what the movement would be for the part-timers. That level moving to the champion level has not been worked through yet. As we reported in the council report, is that we would have to identify what those costs are. So we are looking at those costs being those services that are provided to the city upon renewal of a service agreement. So I think what the councilor is speaking to is maybe something broader. So I'll leave it, I guess, let the councillor speak more to this.
Well, my question is, if we tender something, if they don't include the living wage, does that mean their tender is not acceptable? Their submission is not acceptable?
So that'd be a question I think we go to either Director Douglas or Director or CAO Chemnitz, because it's about procurement. So correct. Based on this approval, will there be a review of our procurement strategy or procurement policies that would then bring some of that language into the procurement policies that we have? So I'll either go to CAO Chemnitz, start with her.
Through Mr. Mayor, Director Douglas will answer the question.
Okay, Director Douglas.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor with regards to looking at the city's tender document. So as the city moves through this certification process, there will be a piece of our tender documents where we will be asking the contractor to certify or to sign off or provide documentation to us that they are in fact a living wage or adhering to the living wage requirement. And we will also be looking at how that does get factored into our evaluation criteria, as there are a number of evaluation criteria when it comes to tenders and RFPs.
Okay, but my question is, will there be consultation with these people? Because my concern is that the larger companies could afford to pay a living wage, and perhaps the smaller ones, the family type business, cannot afford to do so. So that means they would be excluded from city contracts.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if maybe it's worth having Ms. Ann Coleman speak to this, but our understanding at this time is this would be impacting services that be provided to the city. So I'm going to narrow it down. I know there was a reference to like cleaning and things like that happen. It isn't in the broader, I guess, perspective. And I think this is where the councillor is going on other maybe bids and tenders that go out. So if it's okay through you, Mr. Mayor, if Ms. Ann Coleman would like to speak to that and what she's seen employers do in this regard, and to like how that net is casted when we talk about services that are provided to a municipality.
Okay, Ms. Coleman, are you still on?
Yes, I am. Thank you. So let me just clarify one piece of this contract, or the expectations with the contract. So we do not expect that the contractor themselves will become a certified living wage employer. It'd be great if they did, but they don't have to make changes to all of their salaries or wages. Again, if that's their decision to do so, that's fantastic. So it's just the people that are working, who are contracted to work at the city, that need to be earning the living wage while they're working at the city. So if it's something that you're just including a living wage clause within the RFP, they meet that expectation in their tender, and then that's just something that'll automatically just happen. So you know, sometimes that will, that additional cost will fall onto the city then, as you're the, you know, paying that, but that's something that the contractor themselves will have to work into their tender to you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, with respect to the tendering, I'd like to see consultation with the Chamber of Commerce, see if they have any opinion on this.
Okay, that could be something that could be rolled out after this is approved tonight.
Right.
Councillor Miller, you're up.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm very happy to see this report from staff. You know, very thorough. I think it's been about, I remember 2 years ago meeting with Ms. Coleman and Ms. Kleinsmith at Latte Cafe to discuss this, and it's taken this long for a reason. You know, it's very complicated. I think Councillor Kushner touched on arguably the most important part, which is our ability to influence the community that we live in and show leadership here. So excited to see the city taking this step. I won't talk about this. This is one of those things like menstruation products that I've talked about many times at council, so I don't need to reiterate why the living wage is so important. But I am excited as one of the largest employers in the city that we are taking these important steps forward, and to see the implementation plan in place. So certainly hope everyone on council can support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller, for your leadership on this. Councillor Porter, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am also thrilled to see this come forward, and I do think municipalities should be taking a leadership role and setting the bar. The cost of real estate has increased exponentially in Niagara, and the rent has gone up so much, and I'm not sure if some folks are aware, if you own your own house, you might not be following the rental market. I spend a lot of time looking for bachelor apartments and one-bedroom apartments for people who are working poor or on ODSP, and I'm looking at one bedrooms that are $1,000 to $1,200. So I look for apartments for people who make minimum wage, and the cost of those apartments per month are more than my own mortgage, and we're in a double income family. So if we're hiring cleaners and we can't pay them enough to be able to live and just meet their basic needs, then I think we're failing as a city. So I'm very excited to support this tonight, and I thank Councillor Miller for bringing it forward and pushing this through.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Seeing no other further questions, we have the motion that's in front of us. My only question that it's in the report, but in terms of there are 2 or 3 separate boards that operate within the corporation. You got the First Ontario, you got the transit, you got the library. In terms of I guess I'll ask either Director Douglas or Director Pillitary, the applicability of this. Do those boards have to approve a motion similar to this, or is this an overarching motion over all city amenities and facilities?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Our other boards, they're going to have to take this, I think the lead that we're sharing here with the residents here in St. Catharines, I think back to the table. I think they're going to have to review this, and then they're going to have to make a decision on whether or not they're going to embrace the living wage, and they would have to put a separate application to this. Where we are with the Meridian Center, the Meridian Center is ours, and that's a service contract that we have with them, and noted in the council report. We will follow up with council on what that review looks like and that impact. So, but for the others, for the library, the PAC transit, they would be making those decisions on their own, unless there's other guidance that's provided by council to them.
Okay, so anyone want to make an amendment to at least put this onto their agendas? So at least have this motion also be circulated to the 3 other boards that are Councillor Cisco.
Mr. Mayor. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Cisco, Councillor Sorrento. And so that those, and then the council representatives, when it does come to their respective boards, they can address it as well. So it's a non-binding for them. They'll have to figure it out with their work plans, but at least it gets it on their agenda as well. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Miller, for bringing this forward, and Councillor Porter. Both of you have been advocating for this for a while now, so I think it's important that we move forward on this. Councillor Garcia, just for a question.
Yeah, just Mr. Mayor, since you're forwarding this to the boards, should ask Councillor Miller, should it be forwarded to the other municipalities?
Yeah, sure. I certainly, I know the Living Wage Network and Poverty Reduction Network do a great job of promoting this, but certainly the higher the hill we can sing this from, the better.
Thank you.
More work. All right, thank you. And I'll turn it over to the clerk for the vote once Evan is finished typing circulation to area municipalities in Niagara.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. I just wanted to know if it was just local or all of Ontario. So I'll put down.
Let's just do local now.
Okay.
Let's just do local.
Thanks for that.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried unanimously.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Kleinsmith, for being here today and for your advocacy across Niagara. It's greatly appreciated as well. And we are now moving on to what would be 3.2, which is coming before us again. This was the subject matter on Vine Street and Perma Court. And I will look for the motion to be put on the screen, and then a mover and a seconder just to get this. This is the one where we sent it back. Councillor Miller is moving it. Councillor Littleton is seconding it. This one where we sent it back to ask staff to work with the landowner to come up with something that would capture the best interest of both the current business that operates there and also what the city wants to achieve. So I'm going to turn it over to the director, Director Kitse, for Director of Planning, just to provide an overview and also some of the discussions between the owner and the city staff to explain where they've come to a mutual agreement.
Thank you. And through the mayor to council and our listeners this evening, at our last council meeting, we had before you a zoning bylaw amendment for consideration. At that time, council opted to refer the zoning bylaw and the development agreement back to staff to consult with the property owner regarding 3 different areas. So the 3 main items of discussion were the front yard setback for the addition, the landscape buffer along the property line, and the requirement for the development agreement along the parking lot at 2 Perma Court. Our staff did sit down and have some discussions with the applicant's consultant, who I understand is in support of the alternative that's been placed before council this evening. While staff's recommendation in the report from the last council meeting still stands, we have provided the alternative for council's consideration this evening. The staff planner is also online this evening, should you have any additional questions in that regard.
All right, thank you, Director Kitte. I think staff have done an excellent job coming to a resolution with the owner. I think this is as good of a middle ground that we can get. If there's any questions, I think there is. Seeing none, I'll call the question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried
All right.
unanimously.
That's good. Carried 3.3, and this is a legal and clerk services. This is a motion directed from a request from Councillor Miller about the removal of members of council for serious misconduct. Councillor Miller, I'll have you moving this motion if you're okay with it.
Yep.
Seconded by Councillor Harris. And any questions on this? Councillor Miller, you're fine with the direction of the staff?
Yeah, I guess I should. Yeah, I excited, I think, and pleased to see the sort of modifications, which has sort of changed it to asking AMO to look into it rather than making a direct request to the province. I think it's clear. Maybe some more work and clarification. This is a fairly complicated subject matter, but I think it's good the city's showing its support, and certainly the note in the report about standardizing codes of conduct across the province. I think that's a very interesting and probably beneficial potential fallout from this. So certainly would like to see that as well.
Good job. And our AMO representative, if this is approved, will carry it forward to AMO. All right, so let's have a vote on this one.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento. Councillor Sorrento.
No.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, motion to ratify forthwith recommendations. We have a motion that council adopt those items approved forthwith by the general committee Monday, February 22nd, 2021. Gonna have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Townsend. All in favor? Carried. All right, so we got motions. And first up is the new TikTok sensation in St. Catharines, Councillor Porter. Stormwater management. Anyone who was on social media saw an effective use of communicating stormwater fees, which is so riveting, and it was done in a very effective way. Councillor Porter, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did try to make stormwater management go viral. And I looked through TikTok and I thought there's got to be other TikTok videos on stormwater management fees, and indeed there were, but to my surprise, none of them have gone viral yet. And I think that speaks to just stormwater in general, and we never think about it until we have a problem or a flood. So I've been talking about stormwater management fees a lot this year, and I think to the point where some people's eyes glaze over. But I am quite excited to bring this forward because I think we have a recurring problem that comes forward to council every year in terms of our infrastructure deficit and compounded by flooding, and we have to deal with it. So the motion's here. I put it in notice of motion, so hopefully everybody has read it and done some research. And I'm just going to speak to it if I can when I put it on the floor. I remember back in 2015 watching the news, and there was a huge rainstorm in the state of Texas. And at that point, I think 20 inches of rain fell on the city of Dallas, and it was actually quite horrifying. And it was a cautionary tale. They had a 200-year flood. 37 trillion gallons of water fell on the state of Texas, enough to put the whole state in ankle-deep water. And urbanization and land development, as well as climate change, played a significant role in all of this. Dallas is one of the fastest growing urban areas in the US, and they've added hundreds of miles of pavement, buildings, roads, sidewalks, and all of these elements that are impervious. And these are things that can't soak up rainwater like the soil can. So in healthy ecosystems, water from rainstorms and snow mostly goes into the soil or it evaporates, but in our urban communities, especially now in Southern Ontario, we're covered by impermeable surfaces, and much of that water runs off overland and through stormwater sewers, and a lot of those sewers are aging. It also causes flooding and erosions, and most Ontario municipalities do not have the money to know that what we all need to do needs to happen to properly manage stormwater. So we're, as a local government, we're on the front lines of dealing with urban stormwater management, and we're facing two key struggles. The first one is funding, and the second one is flooding and pollution. The current funding mechanisms in place for stormwater management are flawed, and the traditional infrastructure systems are not cost effective. So traditionally, stormwater funding comes out of our municipal property tax budget. It's the most popular method in Ontario. Other jurisdictions are starting to use stormwater management fees to good effect. Taking it out of property taxes is, I would argue, is not working for us. Because it's become very difficult for our council to allocate the necessary funds, because our property tax budget, there's competition for other priorities all the time, so we're not properly funding stormwater. And the other issue with taking it out of property taxes is that there isn't a lot of transparency, so the residents don't know what portion of their property tax bill is for stormwater services. And again, nobody thinks about stormwater services. It's not on the tax bill. We don't think about it until there's a serious flood somewhere, and then everybody's talking about it. When you got water in your basement, you start to look into stormwater management. There also isn't a lot of fairness by taking it out of property taxes because it's not linked to the actual service requirements. Property tax is based on the assessed value of the home. And if you're creating a lot of stormwater, if you have a huge parking lot and a huge roof, it's not being funded fairly in that manner if it's being taken out of property tax that's based on assessed value and not in the amount of stormwater generated by the property. So in 2016, there were a couple of reports, and these are reports that I'm referencing tonight in my little speech. One was by the Environmental Commissioner of Ontario, and I hope you all read this paper. It's called Urban Stormwater Fees, How to Pay for What We Need. And it laid out the case for stormwater fees being a good practical solution for municipalities to deal with our infrastructure deficits related to stormwater. Another one is called New Solutions for Sustainable Stormwater Management in Canada. It was also published in the same year, and it provides a toolkit for municipalities and case studies from 6 cities across North America who implemented stormwater fees, including Philadelphia, Mississauga, Victoria, Kitchener, Washington, and another city in Maryland. I also want to note with that one that the late Brock professor Stephen Renzetti of Brock University, who was an economics professor and an internationally renowned expert on fresh water, he reviewed that paper. So I urge council and the residents who are listening to go look for those papers. They're on the web, and they outline the benefits of implementing a stormwater fee. So you get a dedicated revenue stream specifically for stormwater. Year over year, our municipal work staff and our engineering staff tell us that we're not properly funding stormwater management. The other benefit is greater transparency and awareness to show property owners exactly what they're paying for the service. There's also the fair assignment of the costs. And I think the final and most important thing is a lot of municipalities have created an incentive for people to develop like stormwater systems on their own property. So in some municipalities, you get an incentive or a rebate on your stormwater fees if you do something like put permeable pavement down, you add a rain garden, and you do things to trap stormwater and take it out of the system. So it really causes the local residents to buy into stormwater management as well, and it helps the municipality. So if our 2020 capital budget showed that we had an infrastructure deficit of over $400 million, representing just over 8% of the replacement value of our assets. And we really need to do something about this. And we can look to the cities around us who have implemented stormwater fees, and you can see all the benefits. So Guelph, Kitchener, Waterloo, and Mississauga are 3 local examples. In Mississauga, before they implemented stormwater fees, they had 51,000 storm drains, and that budget would get anywhere from $6 to $16 million per year, and it was always underfunded. The first year of the stormwater fees implementation, Mississauga got $32 million in fees, and then the next year they got $40 million. So that is a dedicated revenue stream to deal with stormwater infrastructure. So flood mitigation is an equation, and with our aging system, the variables have changed over time with that equation. So because we're losing soil and we're building more impervious surfaces, that's changing the equation. Climate change is causing us to change flood mitigation equation, and the cost of replacing our infrastructure is also changing the equation. And I think we need to do something about this. So the ask tonight is to ask staff to do a financing study. So it's not to say, yes, we're going to implement stormwater fees. It's simply to start this study, and it would take 3 to 5 years. So I've had some questions like, why would you implement this now during a pandemic? I think it's incredibly important. I think it's going to take at least 3 to 5 years to do this correctly. I think as we work through the pandemic, we're probably going to be underfunding our stormwater system through this, and I don't want us to be suffering at the end of it. I think we need to make these long-term plans. Climate change isn't going to go away, and I think the time to start this is now. And yeah, and that's it. I think I talked for a long time. Thank you. I'm really, as you can tell, I'm really passionate about this. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Porter. And got a question from Councillor Sorrento.
Well, I just wanted to speak to the amendment if I can, Mr. Mayor.
To the
amendment? To the motion.
Motion, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think in principle, I understand what the intent of this motion is. And I think, Mr. Mayor, if I were to vote in favor of it, I would not be true to myself and with regard to supporting development and growth in the community. So just a couple of points. I see that there was a reference made to Dallas, Texas, and the square mileage of Dallas is about 385 square miles, I think, or 990 some odd square kilometers, and has a population of 1.3 million. So, I think what my concern is, I'd like to see apples compared to apples, not larger cities, even Mississauga. If you look at the population and the infrastructure in their budget. So the second point is that whenever a plan is submitted to the planning department, Mr. Mayor, there's a stormwater plan in that report. There has to be. We're also pending a development charges report that's going to come to us eventually. And also currently, I believe that the region charges development charges, Mr. Mayor. And I don't know what percentage of the development charges goes to infrastructure or to stormwater prices. Ultimately, and I think it's going to pass tonight, but again, this is just, on principle, I just can't support it. Ultimately, if this does come into effect at some point in time, the prices will go to the end. Will go to the end users, Mr. Mayor. It will go to the end users, and I know that the motion is also called for incentives. So, and I'll just say this: so the very people that we're trying to help are going to end up paying more, because it's not going to be the applicants are going to be paying for this. It will be the end users. And in terms of incentives, I know we don't have I believe it's a section 37, and I'll stand corrected from the Director of Planning, but we do have some bonusing, but we also do have incentives by way of CIP. You get a couple of extra floors, and then, you do something for the storm water, something like that. So I understand, I can appreciate the motion, but I can't support it. So that's all that I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrento. Councillor Miller. Councillor Miller, you're up. Sorry. Oh, you're not mic'd.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to say thanks to Councillor Porter for bringing this forward. I think we should also keep in mind not only about the climate emergency we declared, but about a year ago or so we upgraded our climate targets, and that's really a citywide, not just the corporation, citywide goal to improve 132,000 people's response to climate change. And I think this is an important part of that, is not just what the city's doing, but what it encourages the public to do as well. So these are the kind of steps I think we need to take. And again, certainly would recommend people read those reports that Councillor Porter mentioned. And I, just on a note, I'm excited to see the number of outstanding reports list grow. I think Councillor Porter's probably got the record right now for most outstanding reports. And I think when we talk about staff complement, we need to keep that in mind too. These are big, important things we're asking staff to do. And I think we need to make sure they have the resources to do them, because like I said, this is critically important that we take this step.
Thank you, Councillor Miller, Councillor Williams, and then Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. I'll echo Councillor Miller's support for Councillor Porter's motion. We know that climate change is leading to extreme weather events. What used to be 100-year storms are now happening every 3 years. She mentioned Texas. Well, look what happened in Texas last week. There are people who didn't pay attention to their infrastructure. And anyway, I'm supportive of this. And at this stage, it's just asking for staff to explore it. So it's not revolutionary, but it is important work that needs to be done, and I appreciate the work that the councillor put into it. I also hope that when this comes back, staff looks at other strategies, and I'm sure that they're already working on other strategies in terms of land use planning, like green roofs. Tree planting, of course, is important for stormwater management, and putting in regulations and maybe through site plans or however it needs to be done. I didn't want to get a debate on this because it's separate, but having some permeable surfaces instead of always demanding that they be hard surfaces. So I stand fully in support of this motion. Thank you.
Williamson, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I also support this motion, and I discussed with Councillor Porter. I'd be happy to second it, and I'd like to thank her for the exhaustive work she's done on this. Your timing's perfect, given the wastewater report we had tonight indicating that we're in trouble as far as our infrastructure is concerned, and we certainly don't want to raise taxes to cover that. So this is definitely one method of definitely helping this. And as far as Dallas or Mississauga, I'll bring it home to St. Catharines. As Director Smith and Director Martuccio will remember, and you, Mr. Mayor, we did have a flood in Grantham Ward not too long ago. And if you want a freak rainstorm, but we had well over 50 houses with basements that were flooded because our system just couldn't handle what it was given in that very short 2 or 3 hours. And I forget how many exactly what the depth of water was, but it was substantial. So we are definitely to be included in this concern without a doubt. And any funding that we could get from other sources other than our taxpayers would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. And I think there was one more zero after the 5-0 was 500 houses were impacted by that flood in 2017 or 18. It was significant. And actually, I think it was 2018 because Councillor Dodge, you were already on council. So it was a significant flood, and you are right. During that discussion with Director Martuccio at the time, it was also noted that there was a considerable volume of stormwater runoff that also caused the contamination of some of the water that turned out to be sewage water that backed up into people's property because the system as a whole couldn't handle the volume of water. So very important to get this study underway, and looking forward to seeing the results of it. So turn it over to the clerk for the vote.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller. Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris. Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
No.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, so what we have here is there's no calls for notices of motion. And we have 2 report requests. One is Councillor Kushner. You got a report request for Farm 911 Emily project. And that is a request from a member of your constituents over in the Wiley Farms. So that'll be a report request coming back.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that was initiated by the Safety Committee of the Niagara Federation of Agriculture, and the purpose is to address the lack of civic addresses for farm properties. And there was a tragedy a few years ago. The young girl fell off her tractor and the responders could not get to her because they didn't have the address of the family farm. And we see this in cottage country, and yet we don't see it in our area. Thank you.
Yep. And that tragic event took place, I believe, in the Leamington area. It wasn't in Niagara. It was in the Leamington area. That's why it's named the Emily Project, because it's a farming initiative across Ontario trying to get better 911 coverage for those larger scale properties. And another report request, Councillor Littleton, is to come back with opportunities to recognize Richard Pierpoint, one of the first settlers of St. Catharines who was Black. And over to Lori. Just a brief explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm basically asking for this report to come back. Thank you to Rochelle Bush, who's the trustee and church historian at the Salem Chapel BME Church. So she wrote us a letter asking for, Centennial Gardens to change name. And so I'm just asking for a report request on that. Just seconding her request, but also looking at just not limiting it to the renaming of Centennial Gardens. I'm looking for a fulsome report here. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. 2 report requests. Oh, Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering if it would be okay if we could ask staff to include in that report, in addition to a park renaming, what potentially a street renaming could look like. I'm not sure how often we've renamed a street, but there are a couple of streets that don't actually have a lot of addresses on it that come off the 406, or there's an exit for them off the 406. And I just think it would be nice to explore the idea of having a Richard Pierpoint Avenue sign on a 400 series highway on a street, for example, like Westchester. I don't want to name which streets, but what would that look like? And so that's all I think.
Okay, that'll be added. Councilor Littleton, you okay with that? Just a report request.
Yes, of course.
Okay, no more report requests. All in favor of these ones, show of hands. Don't need a mover or seconder, just show of hands. We're all good for it. All right, thank you for that. Okay, we now have minutes to receive from ABCs. We do have that council receive and file the minutes of the advisory committee of council. And that moving the motion to receive the minutes, I'll go with Councilor Porter, seconded by Councilor Cisco. All in favor of the minutes of the ABCs as presented? That's carried. Okay, we're now going to go into general committee, and we're doing this. We're going to go in camera. So we are going in camera for 2 items. And I'm just going to, 2 items are planning and building services, unsolicited property acquisition request in pursuant to bylaw 2015-170 as amended, section B23C, a proposed or pending acquisition disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And then a memorandum from the deputy CAO, 123 St. Paul Street, another in camera as pursuant to 2015 bylaw 170, a proposed or pending acquisition disposition of land by the municipality. So before we head in there and over to a breakout room, disclaimer by the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. By attending the in-camera session, each member of council acknowledges that their obligations under the Code of Conduct, including responsibilities related to the confidentiality of closed session materials and discussions, remain the same as if they were physically present at the meeting. This includes that members of council are not permitted to record the proceedings and that they must ensure that no other person can see or hear any of the confidential deliberations taking place this evening. Thank you.
All right, before you head over, does anyone need to take like a 2-minute break just to get some water? Okay, 1 minute. Looks like 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Come on back. Take us over to the breakout room, Evan. Okay, we're all back, and thanks for a fulsome discussion inside the in-camera. And we have a motion on the floor from in-camera that council approve the staff recommendation, the unsolicited, approve the staff recommendations. That's it. Okay. Councillor Kushner, Councillor Cisco, and let's do a roll call on this one, just so it's official. It's always official, but you know what I mean.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right, and we go to the next one, which is staff recommendation that council receive a confidential, and I believe it's also, well, to proceed forward with. Can I get clarification on that? I think that wording has to change.
Clarification.
Just looking for clarification. Want to make sure the language is right. To our CAO. Is that what is?
Yes, and proceed as directed.
Okay. Thank you.
In camera. Okay.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Cisco, seconded by Councillor Porter.
Okay. Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, 16 bylaws, reading of bylaws. We have a motion that bylaws being considered council agenda A through L be read a first time, considered and passed, that it be signed and executed by the mayor and city clerk. Councillor Garcia and Councillor Phillips making these motions, and all in favor, show of hands. That's carried. We got just a few minutes. Anything important to note from the different ABCs, the boards? Is anything? I know nothing's really going on. Everyone's just sort of copacetic right now. Okay, just wanted to offer that opportunity. Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. And Councillor Littleton and Councillor Williamson, and all in favor of the adjournment. Okay, folks, have a great night. Take care of yourself. Stay safe. We'll see you the next time.
Good night, everyone.
Great meeting.
Well.